Hi everybody, my name is Ryan Haar and this is my Module 1 presentation. A little bit about me. I'm from Pueblo, Colorado, which is about 2 hours south of Denver. I'm 33 years old. I've been married to my beautiful wife, Colby, for the past 9 years. Together we have a 5-year-old daughter named Sadie. I am in my 7th year of teaching at Dutch Clark Digital. I teach social studies. I'm also the assistant head football coach at Pueblo South High School. This upcoming season will be my 14th season coaching. A little bit more about my career. As I said, I do teach at Dutch Clark Digital. Is an online high school here in Pueblo, Colorado, through Pueblo District 60. It's my 7th year teaching. I've done 5 years in an online school. I did 2 years at Pueblo South, a traditional high school. I am the assistant head football coach and the offensive run game coordinator at Pueblo South High School. And again, this will be my 14th year of coaching in this upcoming fall season. I got my bachelor's degree in history and education from Colorado State University, Pueblo. And my first master's degree was in sports coaching from the University of Northern Colorado. And this is my second master's degree. What are my expectations for this course? I'm expecting to gather information about how school laws are set up to protect our educators, our administrators, and our districts, learning at the local, state, and federal level. And I also expect to learn how to protect myself and others from information moving forward in my career and following the proper protocol throughout my career as an administrator and for teachers. So what kind of supports do public schools receive from local governments? According to the Center of Public Justice, the state governments generally assign responsibility for accountability and operation government-run schools to local school districts. So in most states, school districts are created using independent boundaries. Some states use the geographic lines to determine counties and boroughs. To create their school districts. Each school district is overseen by a school board. Members are either elected by the public or they are appointed. Each school board appoints a superintendent, normally an experienced and knowledgeable school administrator that acts as a CEO for the district. Local school boards are also responsible for establishing the curriculum, hiring personnel, and other operational decisions, although sometimes these decisions are further pushed to building administrators. Federal and state governments usually offer slightly more than half of government school fundings, but school boards are responsible for the rest. Typically, this is done by collecting property taxes on all the homes and businesses in the area. As a result, the amount of funding available for school districts has a wide variety of variables, including tax rates in there, tax exemptions, and the overall wealth of the community in general. The public schools receive different things from state governments. The state government's primary goal is to oversee and hold accountable the government-ran schools. Although they delegate much of their authority to the local school districts, most use Common Core standards, which have been developed in the with the insight of governors, state level education departments, and outside resources. They are able to establish educational standards for courses, and they provide operational costs for schools. In Colorado, the Colorado Department of Education is responsible for implementing state and federal education laws, dispersing state and federal funds, holding schools and districts accountable for their performance, licensing all educators in the state of Colorado, and they provide public transparency for performance and financial data. As far as the federal government goes, the federal government has policy for education that began to take shape around the Revolutionary War. In 1791, the 10th Amendment, which enabled state powers, not the federal government, the ability if it wasn't given to the federal government, it was given to the state governments as far as those powers, and it was written into the U.S. Constitution. It was founded in 1876 as the Department of Education 1867 as part of Department of Education, falling under the executive branch of the government. In 1890, you had the Second Morrill Act, gave land grants for colleges and universities. In 1917 and 1946, you had the Smith-Hughes Act and George Barton Act, respectively, and they focused on home economics, industrial arts, and agricultural science for high school students. 1944, you had the GI Bill passing, giving military veterans assistance to go to college. 1958, the National Defense Education Act was developed to combat the Soviets in the areas of science, math, and foreign language technology. And in the 1960s and 70s, you had the Civil Rights Act of 1964, Title IX of the Education Amendments in 1972, Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, and it banned discrimination of race, sex, and disability correspondingly. And it made civil rights implementation essential and continuing to focus on the Department of Education. In 1965, Elementary and Secondary Education Act provided funding for schools, for resources, and academic support for poor students. And in 1975, the Individuals with Disability Education Act gave support for special education. So those are some of the major cases that the federal government has passed through. And also in 2001, you had the No Child Left Behind Act, which held local schools accountable for all students, but focusing primarily on students in poverty, minorities, and special education, and ESL, English as a Second Language Learner. In 2015, we had Every Student Succeeds Act. This was passed and it highlighted the disadvantages and high needs of students, high academic standards, better information platforms statewide, and it had allowed access to preschool and accountability for the positive change in low-performing schools. As we learned in the article from Harris, Ladd, and Smith and West, it suggests that the federal government follows four main principles about the government's role in education. The federal government should safeguard that no student is deprived of the right of equal education opportunity. That the federal government should offer funding to aid in education opportunity for high-need students. The federal government should foster education, research, and development. And four, that the federal government should support and develop the conditions to promote continuous improvement of state and local education systems. So who is in charge locally as far as education, and what are the duties and responsibilities? First, you have the superintendent and the appointed school board of education members. Superintendent is a paid position, as they are the CEO of the district, basically, and the board of education is determined by the district whether they are elected in or if they're volunteers. The which level has the most power and control over public education? Local, because the states and federal governments typically delegate responsibility to this level. This level is still highly dependent on funding from both the state and federal governments, though. But at the local level, you do see a lot more of the laws implemented there. Who's in charge at the state level? As far as this happens, it's the State Department of Education. For Colorado, it is Katie Ains, Dr. Katie Ains. She, according to the Colorado Department of Education, Dr. Ains' duties are to advise the State Board of Education concerning the current operation and status of public schools and other educational matters. She establishes and maintains a system of personnel administration within the department, and she ensures that all policy, rules, and regulations adopted by the state board are duly executed. All positions with authority over local school districts and state policy are paid positions. At the federal level, the Secretary of Education, Miguel Cardona, is in charge. His duties are to establish policies for federal financial aid and education and dispersion, as well as supervising the funds, collecting data on U.S. schools, and publishing research focusing national attentive on important educational issues, and prohibiting discrimination and ensuring equal access to education. Again, all positions with authority over state, local school districts, and federal policy are paid positions. So when looking at the 3 levels of government and seeing which has the most influence over the national board policies, when we look at Standard 6.1, it is at the local level, 6.2 is at the state level, and Standard 6.3 is at the federal level. And how do all of these work together to support educational success and well-being of each student and adult? All 3 levels of government support the needs of students, allowing school districts to manage their specific demographics and needs, allow the state level to provide school districts adequate funding and resources, and at the federal level, using the broad scope of education and funding to delegate necessary resources. And by doing this, we're providing a quality education for students. We're hoping to create a well-rounded adult. Here are my correlations to the standards 6.1 through 6.3 for this module, along with the references for the module. Thank you guys for your time, and I look forward to going through this class with you guys.